Hello, I'm Rick O'Shea and I'm the literary curator for this year's UCD Festival. I want to welcome you to this very special edition. This year's festival is called UCD Festival at Home and is a chance for the global UCD community to virtually come together in these unusual times and join us on your smartphone, smart TV or laptop for this free event. We're also very happy to be expanding our digital and worldwide festival audience. Although the annual UCD Festival has had to move online this year, the inspiring, engaging and informative activities of the regular festival remain. It's wonderful to have the global UCD community of students, alumni, future students and friends join us for this virtual conversation and for the events at the UCD Festival at Home. Stay up to date on the full UCD Festival at Home programme at ucd.ie/festival. I hope you enjoy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Living the American Dream as part of 2020's UCD Festival. My name's Jessica Traynor, and I'm delighted to be here interviewing the wonderful Fiona McEntee. Fiona is an award-winning immigration lawyer. She's founding and managing attorney of McEntee Law Group, based in Chicago. She's a national spokesperson for the American Immigration Lawyers Association and makes frequent contributions to MSNBC, BBC, CNN, RTE, and others. She's a passionate and dedicated advocate for immigrants' rights, and her activities range from lobbying in Washington to suing the Trump administration pro bono over the travel ban. She's been inducted into the Irish American Hall of Fame in the Irish American Heritage Centre in Chicago and is a recipient of the ISBA Elmer Gertz Award for her service safeguarding human rights, among many other plaudits and awards. Fiona is joining us here today to discuss her work as an immigration lawyer and her beautiful children's book, Our American Dream. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome you here, Fiona. And to kick off our conversation, I'd love you to tell us a little bit about what brought you to America in the first place.
Well, thank you, Jessica, for that lovely intro. And I think it's kind of suitable that we're discussing this in the framework of the UCD Festival, because it was actually my experience studying in UCD that originally brought me to Chicago. And I feel like for that, I will be forever grateful to UCD for that opportunity. And actually, it was one of the reasons I picked to study law in UCD was the availability of exchange programs. So it was back in 2002, I got picked to come to study law here in Chicago through the UCD exchange program. So I came here with a group of, I think there were 7 of us in total. We didn't really, I had a cousin who lived in the suburbs, but beyond that, didn't really know anybody in Chicago, and we all moved out here. And it was for a year originally, and so we did the year, and I just fell in love with the city, and I moved back to UCD and graduated, and then I came back out in 2005 to do my Juris Doctor here.
Mm-hmm. And was there something about that experience of the cultural exchange that drove you towards immigration law, or was it something else that gave you that kind of passion?
You know, I tell the story a lot because I think it kind of sums me up as a person, that my dad's nickname for me growing up, he used to call me Save the Whales. So, having like chats around the kitchen table, I would be talking about, the rights of union workers or traveller rights or the environment. And so dad's kind of nickname for me was Save the Whales. And of course, studying in UCD back in like early 2000s, there was no immigration law as a topic. And really even in the States, it's certainly not the way it is now. So it wasn't during that first exchange program that I discovered immigration, but it was when I moved back. I was kind of reviewing the class list and I saw it as an option. And just thought that it would check a lot of my social justice boxes. And, I felt like, well, I'm kind of an immigrant myself here, and maybe that would be something that was interesting. And it was almost like from day one, I really fell in love with the area of law and was able to do a couple of internships throughout the law school there. So I kind of left law school on graduation kind of knowing that was exactly what I wanted to do.
Oh, fantastic. And do you think that you were aware of the parallels between the Irish historical immigrants experience and the experiences of current immigrants? Do you think that influenced you from the outset?
I don't know if it influenced me on like that bigger scale from the outset, but I definitely felt connected to the practice area because of coming from Ireland. But I think now, or certainly over the past 3 years, the parallels, I think, between Irish immigrants and migrants today have probably never been stronger. And I think it's because since I've been practicing for 12 and a half years, and, the climate has changed a lot, with the new administrations come in and different policies and just different ways of looking at immigration. So during the Obama era, that's when the DACA program was introduced to protect, children who'd been brought here and were, dreamers, as they're called here. So you're kind of living during that type of, really progressive policies, kind of acknowledging contributions of immigrants to kind of where we are today and what we've seen, which honestly has been completely inhumane and horrific with regards to things like, separating families at the border, having no ability to track families, those types of things that we're seeing now, that I think has kind of put a spotlight on the inhumane treatment of migrants that's happening right now, and versus how maybe Irish immigrants were treated, when they first came to America.
And how has the current administration affected your practice on a day-to-day basis?
I mean, it's hard to really put it into words, to be honest, because what I would say is that there's a common thread amongst our clients, and we represent people in all different situations. So we would work with, musicians, with artists, we could be advising a doctor about his or her options, and then families. So it's kind of across the board, a very diverse client base, and everyone asks if we just work with Irish people, and the answer is no. We have a lot of Irish clients, but we also have clients with very diverse, backgrounds as well. But I think, as different as their situations may be, what I think now is that the thread, the commonality that they share is this feeling of anxiousness about kind of what's going to happen next, and the feeling of uncertainty, which is common across pretty much no matter what immigration kind of process you're in. Mm-hmm. It's very hard for us to give certainty with regards to, now that could be processing times, outcomes, what type of changes might happen along the way. We've been mid-process with somebody, and the amount of different changes that have come up, before we even got a case filed, that we'd had to switch gears numerous times before we can even get something filed for them. So yeah, I feel like that's just kind of an example of what I see, is that this feeling of just dread and anxiety about the process is just felt in every client.
Yeah. And one of the most fascinating things that I came across in your biography is the notion of suing the Trump administration over the travel ban. And can you talk to us a little bit about that process, how it came about, and what came of it all? And were there any impacts and changes?
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, I feel like almost from day one out the gate with this administration, we saw the travel ban, right? That was I think a couple of days into the administration, like a few days post inauguration. So myself and my brother Ray, who works with me actually in my practice area, who also went to UCD, Ray and I had kind of preemptively signed up to be on call should anything happen at any of the airports. It was through this IRAP, which is the International Refugee Assistance Project, had set out the call to say, we've heard kind of rumours of some ban, but we're not really sure what it's going to be like. Would people be willing to sign up? And so Ray and I said, yeah, absolutely. Just let us know. And my husband and I had actually been out at a 40th birthday the night before, having so much fun and, just celebrating, and then woke up the next morning to this email that I feel like, even thinking about it, I really get like chills. It basically was like, go to the airport now. Because the night before, the now infamous Muslim ban, travel ban, had been signed. So Ray and I went out there, and we were one of the first kind of attorneys that were there. And so that's when a lot of my media stuff started as well, because I kind of became the ad hoc media spokesperson for the group. We started representing a man. A man came up to us, and his wife and his 18-month-old baby he was waiting for them to come through the terminal, and they were coming from Iran. So they were Iranian originally. Actually, the child was a US citizen born in the US. The mother was a green card holder. He also had his green card and was there waiting for them, and they got caught in this travel ban situation. And so we were trying to figure, and it was now probably 2 or 3 hours he was waiting, and the hours kept creeping up, and there was no sign of the wife or child. But anyway, ultimately they got released. But that's kind of started my advocacy around the travel ban, and the travel ban got revised on numerous occasions, I think 3 times. And what ultimately ended up being the case that went to the Supreme Court, we had actually filed a lawsuit here in Chicago on behalf of 3 US citizens that were all engaged to Iranian citizens, so fiancé petitions. And ultimately, we went to federal court here. We had some great partnerships with the law firm Freeborn and Peters, and some of my other immigration lawyer colleagues. So ultimately, all 3 of the fiancés got their visas and were able to come in. So it was a happy, ending. But we filed just before the case, or just after the case that ended up at the Supreme Court. And obviously, the outcome there wasn't what people had hoped for. But yeah, that was kind of my first taste of like suing Trump and the administration here in federal court.
It must be so hard to be so close to those human stories, and to be in a situation where you know that a lot of people who might express opinions on this issue have never had that close connection that you have when you're representing your clients.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it adds, like, having gone through the process definitely gives you the ability to like have empathy. But I also feel like you shouldn't have to, be an immigrant yourself to try to appreciate what people are going through. And like, ultimately, another commonality that I see, despite all the things that you hear to the contrary, I mean, for the most part, immigrants are coming here for reasons like, previous Irish immigrants. They're coming here to create opportunities for themselves and for their families that they might not have, overseas, or, they're coming here to share their art or their culture, and really a lot of times they just want the same thing as everybody else. And so I feel like it's a shame that that lack of empathy is there. And I feel like, we did witness it, I think, really in the most extreme version was when you saw the separation of families at the border. And then people were saying, well, that's what they get. And, types of thing where you're like, these are children that are being, that will be traumatized for their whole lives, so I feel like I do have that extra level of empathy, but I also feel like you shouldn't have to, because these are human beings and these are people's lives,
So when we were talking previously, before we began this interview, we had a lovely chat about the deep and romantic connection that Ireland and America have had through that emigration history, but also from that notion of the American dream, that America really is a place, or was a place, perhaps, where you can go to build something beautiful in your own life.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that the notion of the American dream, the more I think about it, and I think that's kind of what inspired me to write the book in some ways, was, I think it is a pretty fragile concept right now. I think we've seen that there are people who want the American dream to only apply to a certain group of immigrants. And that is just so wrong, because that to me goes against the whole notion of the American dream, is that it should be in theory accessible to everybody who wants to not get handouts, people don't come to America to sit on the welfare system. I feel like if they were going to do that, they might pick another country, but it's not what brings people here. So I think it's pretty fragile, but I think it's really worth protecting. And I feel like we need to fight for that right for everybody. And I think that I recognise that I'm in a very privileged position on so many ways. You know, I'm educated, I am white and Irish, and I'm a US citizen now. I'm a naturalised US citizen. So all those things really give me a voice that I feel compelled to use to advocate, not just for Irish immigrants, although I do that as well, but it's for every immigrant, you know, who wants to come here and wants their shot at the American dream. And the great thing about practicing immigration law is that I actually get to see these dreams like lived out. And it's so special. Like I work a lot with foreign students. I can see, you know, their startup, what it can turn into. Like, and these are direct examples, like raising $40 million and creating technology that is saving lives, to, you know, the mom who we were able to reunite with her baby that she hadn't seen since he was an infant, and he's now 13, and we were able to bring him here. So, I mean, I think the American dream looks a little different, no matter, you know, depending on the person. But that's what I love so much about my job, is that getting to see what can happen if people only get the opportunity to just really live out their dream.
Thanks for that, Fiona. And I think that brings us really neatly on to the thing we're here to discuss, which is your beautiful children's book, The American Dream. And I'd love to ask you just to read a short passage from it so that our viewers can get a sense of what it's all about.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. So here, let me make sure that you can see it. So it's called Our American Dream, and I'm just going to read the first couple of pages. So here's the illustrations, so you can see. Can you see that okay? Yeah. Okay. In a country so great, with mountains so tall, was born a dream for one and for all. That dream is known throughout the land, the American dream, a dream so grand. Immigrants come from countries far to dream their dreams beneath American stars. Let's see who's here in this great place, what dreams we share in the United States.
That, Fiona. Can you tell us a little bit how this book project came about?
So, in addition to being an immigration lawyer, I'm also a mom, and that's a pretty important job for me, one of my most important jobs. But I have two kids, Rose, who's 6.5, and my son Perry, who was 4 in January. My husband and I had actually been invited into my daughter's preschool class a couple of years ago, and I wanted to bring in a book. I can't remember what book we ended up bringing in, but I was like, oh God, I wish there was a book that, you know, spoke about modern day immigration in the way that I see it from my practice area, seeing it like as in the diverse cast of characters with all different kind of stories. And there are some really good books on immigration, but they're kind of, a lot of them are maybe focusing on one particular story or one, you know, and I was thinking, you know, I wonder, is there a way to write a book maybe that touches on a lot of these types of clients really, that and family and friends that I help. So I just thought, you know what, I'm just gonna, maybe I'll just write a book. And so I started thinking of the types of characters that I would include in the book. So you know, I knew the types of immigrants that I wanted to highlight. And then I came home from work one Friday and I just got my phone out and just kind of, honestly, I feel like I just got so inspired, and I ended up writing now the whole book. It sounds like it's like, you know, a long novel, and, you know, so it's obviously a short children's book. But I guess the point is that I felt really inspired on that evening, and pretty much by, you know, 1 or 2 in the morning, I had written the whole book. And so then I, you know, rang my mum and said, right, so remember that book I said I was going to write? I pretty much did it last night. And so, yeah, so then I had the script, and then I started, you know, researching what should I do now kind of thing, because I had no idea what to do.
That is a gorgeous process, though. I love the notion of just being taken by this burst of creativity. And one of the beautiful things about the book, alongside the words, are the stunning illustrations by Srimali Basani. And how did you make that connection? And did Srimali respond to your words then? And you did mention that a number of the characters in the book are based on real stories. And how did that all kind of weave together?
So Srimali is amazing. She's actually based in Italy, so I've never met her in person, but hopefully at some point I would love to be able to do that. So Srimali, if you see this, thank you for adding your amazing art to my words. It just really completed, I think, the vision and the book, and it just, so many people comment on the illustrations. But before I met Srimali, I found a publisher, and so it's Mascot Books. They're an independent publisher based outside of DC. And actually, the reason I was kind of drawn to them was they're founded by an immigrant. I think he's from Nepal originally, and also was a lawyer as well. So I had a chat with him, and I'd sent them the script, and he loved it. And so then they had like a huge portfolio of like independent artists that they work with. They'd sent me a few, and I just said, it's not really, like, I had it in my head, I knew exactly what I wanted the book to look like. And so then I sent them more images kind of back of the style that I liked, and a few other things. And I'd had this picture in my head of like this balloon arch that you can see here. I had this kind of picture. And then the next two set of portfolios that they sent me, one of them was like this. It was Srimali's, and there was all these balloons in it, and I was like, oh my God, that's it, like, she's the one. And so she was just finishing up a project, and then she was available as well. She was just, so we waited a couple of weeks for her to become available. And a lot of them are based on real people. So what I did was I pulled images that I didn't want to be micromanaging her creativity either. I think that's the whole beauty of working with an artist, is that they bring their own creative idea to the words. And so I didn't want to be like saying this is exactly, but I gave kind of samples of like what I thought. And so some of them, are actually based on real photographs. And I think we might be talking about them individually, or at least some of them. But so some of them are actually based on real life photographs of real people. And then she just kind of took it from there. And then there was a bit of like, editing and back and forth. And it was just a great process. And I think that I don't feel like the book would be the same if it wasn't for her. And also Nina, who was the editor at Mascot Books, was incredible as well. So.
And can you tell us, you have chatted a little bit about those individual stories, but can you tell us a little bit about those individually? Because I think it's having heard a little bit myself, I think some of them are very beautiful stories.
Yeah. So one of them is based on my sister-in-law, Faith. So I mentioned earlier that my brother works with me here, and his wife, Faith, was adopted actually as a baby from the Philippines. And so she was 6 months old when she was brought to America. And so here is, I don't know if you can see this, but this is her story. So this photo in particular here, this other one here, I'm all mixed up on the pages. This photo here is based on an actual image that her parents had of when they first brought her to America. And her cousins were at the airport waiting to welcome her. She was like a 6-month-old baby. And it was like really emotional when I saw that photo, because her dream, Faith's dream, and her parents' dream has turned into like this beautiful family for my brother, and they have a baby and just had a second baby. So they have 2 kids now, and they're so happy. And so it's kind of showing that and what can happen when people again get the opportunity to come here. And she's just so poetic when she talks about her American dream and her story. It's just, and I feel so honored that people allowed me to include their really personal stories in the book. And for her, Faith always talks about how representation really matters, how seeing yourself in the pictures of the pages of a book are really important. Yeah. And like how having, adoption stories put into, a book about other people. And it's not just, there's nothing wrong with books that are just about adoption as well, but she liked the idea of having the story weaved into other people's stories too. Another character that I'll talk about is Yulia. So she's a real person. She is actually an artist. So she's an artist from Russia who I got to work with to help her stay here following graduation. She is an incredible artist. And actually the pages are, the art that's depicted there is actually based on her actual artwork. Shrimley, I gave Shrimley a link to her portfolio and she went and sketched them in. Now, Yulia paints a lot of provocative feminist type artwork. Obviously, we wanted to keep the illustrations PC, so she picked ones that would be appropriate for children. But I guess from Yulia's point of view, the stuff that she paints, she would not have the freedom to do that in Russia. She absolutely would not be able to paint in the way that she does. She's able to do that here, and she's just phenomenal. And so just getting to work with her and to see her American dream that's just turned into the most incredible story ever. I feel so, so fortunate to be able to, and she's turned into a really good friend of mine as well. She's just released a whole deck. She's on Instagram, and I can share her links if we'd be able to do that. But she's released a whole, it's like a limited series. She's painted a whole deck of cards in the most amazing. She's just a phenomenal artist. But for me, getting to help her stay here, and we all benefit from it, right? She's truly an amazing artist, and there's no reason why people shouldn't want people like her to just live and be happy and paint her work here, and she wouldn't be able to do that in Russia.
I mean, it's fascinating to hear you say that and to hear you talk about some of those stories, because I've found it myself in the work that I've done with asylum seekers is just, it's the multiplicity of stories. You know, everybody leaves home for a different reason. And often I think that the boundaries of understanding in terms of people coming and seeking asylum or seeking a new life in other countries are around the fact that people want it to be one simple story about oppression or war or poverty, when actually it's a story with so many different strands. And I think you capture something about that in the book, which is really beautiful and very celebratory at the same time. I mean, even the notion of the balloons, you know, from them through the gorgeous illustrations, through the multiplicity of stories, I think you really capture that sense of scope. And I have to say, my own daughter, who's only 2.5, is absolutely entranced by the book. I have been trying to keep her little sticky fingers away from it.
Well, now she can have at it after this.
She can have at it. But you know, how have your own children responded to the book?
Well, first, Jessica, thank you for all the amazing work that you're doing. You know, and I know that I'm sure hopefully you'll get to share the work that you're doing as well. But against the direct provision, and just kind of, I think, highlighting that, because not everybody, even outside of, I mean, even maybe in Ireland, are really aware of kind of what's involved in that. And so, yeah, that's it exactly. Not everybody's story is the same, and we shouldn't want that, because how boring. That's what I would say to my kids. Imagine how boring it would be if we all looked the same. And imagine, you know, and kind of they love it, especially because they're both actually, I got to sneak in their names in here, and actually Rosita is based on an actual dreamer, and then Rose, and then my son Perry's name is in there as well. But Rose has actually this is her big thing about it, is she got to put a piece of her own artwork into the book, and so she's like so happy. So here, let me see if I can show you this. So this little drawing of this little here, that's based on a little picture. She loves art, and she draws real quirky little like people. But we got to insert that into the book, and so Rose is like, my art, you know, she's like so proud. But you know, I think it is important that we just talk to kids about this, you know, about diversity, about the fact that someone might have 2 dads, you know, somebody might be you know, everyone's family is different and everybody's story is different. And I think that and all the studies show as well, the earlier we start talking about this cultural competence and, you know, just different stories with kids in a way that, you know, you meet them at their level, they become more empathetic, right? And that's, I think, how to kind of go back to what we were talking about earlier, I feel like we're in this spot right now because some people have no ability to empathize. They can't even put themselves in the shoes of other people. And therefore, you know, they can dehumanize them and they can, you know, treat them in ways that are just horrific. So I feel like my goal is honestly on a bigger picture is like to make children and immigrant children feel welcome, to feel like they belong here just as much as me and my kids, you know. But then also maybe in 20 years' time, you know, I mean, I'm not naive to think my book is going to change the mindsets of everybody in America or worldwide. But like, honestly, having these conversations is a way to hopefully encourage empathy, and maybe, you know, we won't be inclined to treat immigrants as like, you know, in such a dehumanized way. And for me, working on this book, it is a celebration because it actually has been very therapeutic to have such a positive outlet, because, you know, it is pretty traumatic working in our field now. And our clients are obviously the ones suffering, you know, the majority of the trauma, but it does affect us in other ways too. And I think that to have a positive outlet, and a portion of the proceeds are going to go to 2 immigration nonprofits as well. And so that will enable them to keep up their work, whether it's litigation or storytelling. And so that's really important to me as well, that we're able to do that.
Fantastic. And do you think you've been bitten by the writing bug now, Fiona?
Yes, definitely. I've already been thinking of other books that I've been working on. One of my colleagues actually approached me, another immigration lawyer that I know, about an idea that he had for a book that he wanted to work on together. So I think maybe now that we all have so much time on our hands in quarantine, we might be able to, you know, get some writing. But it's important that I really, you know, of course I wrote the book, but I want to really create the platform for the people who are in the book, you know, and it's important that they get the opportunity to share their story, you know, in their own way. And so prior to this, prior to everything happening with the pandemic, we had a couple of in-person events that we were scheduling. So myself, Faith and Yulia, were going to do just like a panel about it, so that they could have their own platform. And that's really the key as well, is that to create conversation pieces, so that immigrants can come forward and tell their story and kind of just talk about their own experiences in their own way.
Yeah, I think that's such an important platform to provide. And I think that, you know, it's the kind of thing that often many people really would like to share their stories, but until somebody approaches them with the kind of generosity to say, no, this is interesting and this is important, they might not have the confidence. So I'm delighted to hear that you're doing that, and I'm looking forward to hearing all of those other voices as well. And I suppose just to finish off, I'm wondering how you think the current crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, will affect immigration in the USA in the coming years.
That's a great question, because I feel like it's already impacting us here and our clients. Actually, over the weekend, on Saturday, I spent the majority of the day writing an op-ed that I'm hopefully get pitched out this week. But basically, one of the things the administration is trying to do is end the work permits for foreign students. And when students graduate here with a degree, they get a year to work in their field, and an additional 2 years if they have one of the STEM, you know, the science, technology, engineering, maths degrees. And so the administration, there was actually 4 senators that sent a letter to President Trump saying, and I quote, it was like they could think of no reason why these students should be able to remain here and take jobs. Again, this narrative of taking jobs away from Americans. And, you know, I did a pretty in-depth analysis of it to show, you know, foreign students, and I know it's the same in Ireland, when students come from abroad, they pay a lot of tuition, which in turn helps to subsidise, you know, domestic students. And they also spend money when they're in living in other countries, whether it's rent or whatever. And so I had all these stats about, for every 7 foreign students, there's 4, you know, domestic jobs created by them just kind of living here and being here. And, you know, I think that it's important to their decision. There was a study done that like over 60% of them make a decision to study in a place based on being able to work there afterwards. And so it's like, and then there's innovation, you know, like now's the time that we want this diverse people to come together to try to tackle the pandemic and be innovative. And, you know, like could talk about all the statistics of the Fortune, you know, 100 companies and how many were started by an immigrant. But it's like, why are we reverting back to like excluding immigrants when we are going to need them more than ever now? We need them. We need their innovation. We need their creativity, you know? And so I think that we're going to see that kind of protectionist mentality play out a lot more. And we now, I think it's more important than ever before that people who are advocating or using their voices in support of immigrants, right, to say, why are we trying to restrict family-based immigration? You know, that's what's happening right now with the various, you know, immigration bans and things like that. So I think that hopefully people, advocates like myself, activists will start to continue to speak out, because now is not the time to be closing America's doors to people that are, you know, innovative, creative. That's not what we need to do. And I concluded basically saying that that would be a huge mistake, and it's not one that America can afford to make right now. And so so I think it's just, yeah, I think our advocacy will go up to a new level. Hopefully then people come out and vote in November and kind of see the impact of you know, the decision to vote or to not vote. And like, I don't want everyone to just, you know, I think it is boring if everybody agreed with me as well, you know, that I want to have these conversations in a way that is just honest and is kind of reflective of, you know, the reality. And so I think that the more we talk about things, I think that we're more alike than some people think. And I think that we can really get there by having conversations like this.
Absolutely. And it does feel like, you know, at the moment that history is intensely cyclical, and that we're at what I think many of us will feel is quite a low point. And but I think that these discussions, these conversations, these conflicts, if necessary, and also things like this beautiful book that will hopefully open the eyes of a new generation to a different way of thinking, a way of thinking in terms of celebration rather than fear. I think all of those things will make a real difference. So thank you so much, Fiona McEntee, for joining us today here at the UCD Festival. It's been such a pleasure to speak to you. Fiona's book, Our American Dream, is available now, and I'm sure the links will be available to look through. So just thank you again so much, Fiona, and I hope all of our viewers today will enjoy some other wonderful events as part of the UCD Festival 2020.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And thanks to UCD.